Hello America, hello lives, before being, while being, and increasingly being relevant to that which is associated with the Constitution of the United States, that has prevented free speech, that has prevented logic, if it doesn't collude with criminal foreign influence uses of premises, self-value, therefore identity treatment, self-value, sequence shifts. For example, this is intersciences, and this is a method that exploits where that is defended. This is leading up to the World Trade Center attack. And since we have people involved with further natures of organized crime and of worse than war crimes, predicate acts, the predicate acts delivery system method that force uses of color and of quality of fact treatment nature that pretending to be about free speech simultaneously, while pretending to be about the Constitution simultaneously, legitimately, while self-valuing criminally foreign influence sequence treatments, premises treatments, active treatments, and all that which is only appears by everyone, even though it's by everyone, to be that's the way things are, stuck that way. That's just a space too big or too small. See, what is the identity of big and small at the same time? My other video, I misspoke. I meant to say, what is delicate, what is most delicate, what is most finite, and what is most hard, but not unbreakable, are simultaneously invisible but discernible. Subjects not with all arts, boxings, but where and how the scientists share an identity. This is not God. God is an algebraic variable that a science about what is true simultaneously. See, one there about a science that uses the phenomenon of how there is discernibly one identity of truth that does not deny the slightest exceptions and or nor exception nature. In fact, as them, one identity of truth is truth, but it is all exceptions at the same time too. It is the identity that inventions work or not in relationship to it. They are further positive or not in relationship to it. Criminal insidiousness nature itself is proof that there can be positive. That is of a nature in collusion with overt negative. See, this breaching predicate acts delivery system method propagated bonded natures of distinct from its own methods of its own one method of usages of criminal insidiousness natures of premises treatments, identities of premises treatment natures, identities of sequence treatment natures, identities of active progressive value/value progression treatment natures, where we are syntax nature, fact treatment nature per its system, per its value/value progression. Why, where, and why, and how we have to use words like value. Any word. See, but we have those sequence shifts and styles of it, maintained and capable of defending that, and of affording discerned all that is capable of being realized when we use logic that does not deny exceptions, does not deny exception nature. The victims that are behind, and all fake sides rolls with it. Fake sides in relationship to the evidences of where and how what is true always and not denying exceptions. That was evil And worse, that was that method itself. Forced roles with the evil. Sustained and layered again. That was a breaching method that forced this before the founding of every modern nation, before their leaders were even born, to revolutions that were only capable of staying contained, used remotely, because not one person fathomed that what was being done, which is they knew that they would have to blame the real causes of negative value nature actions, natures, acts, and progressions on something as fact treatment nature, as syntax treatment nature. And they knew that then they would have to defend that. They knew that they would have to defend treatments of positive. There have to be natures, identities of positive, of jobs, of titles, as criminal insidiousness natures of positive. Simultaneously, increasingly, fact treatment nature being able to defend that in their own means to feel good. And to be healthy, there's a system, sick system. You have to entertain the finite forsaken. I caught that in a quick speech by Martin Luther King on a clip of him speaking on CNN in a commercial. He was not saying that the finite is not important. He's speaking to people, knowing his audience, which is everyone. We're already forsaken the finite. And see, now this stage, for example, we have debates in relationship to identity ground locations. That has a natural ties to our fact treatment nature, syntax treatment nature. Where and how Earth is a space/existence. That is an increasing identity of volume /S. In relationship to that identity of value progression, that inventions work or not in relationship to it. They're further positive or not in relationship to it. Its identity of relationship to itself, the ancients revealed. There are proofs. When we value sequence true, and we're trying to figure out what was the best way, the sequence true, the order of the sequence true, the value of that. When we're distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously with the four other, the order of the finite, the order of the finite, the value of the order of the finite, distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously with that identity of sequence true. Sequence/simultaneous nature true before the smallest thing, before anything that comes or will come, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as itself, as the identity of value/value progression that we know generates everything. Only the extent of it is debatable, but how other is pretended and debated, it also shows where and how there are part of how there's more showing the whole thing, but they're using criminally foreign influence premises treatments. They're using physical delusions, and so we have to have experts about such things. But instead of having experts on physical delusions and on logic proper, on justice, satisfying all appearances of justice, that we have victims that came through the same thing in collusion with the overt criminal enterprises. Not legitimately, not just legitimately. They have to have all this is standardized and entrenched. Entrenched, standardized, juxtaposed. Manifest criminal insidious natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments in collusion, blaming the real causes, which are answers, which are revelations, which are means with where and how we are. We will be, we didn't think about it. When we are valuing individual rights, group rights, and species body of value rights simultaneously, it is individual rights first. For example, with English classes, a popular book is Strunk and White. And they say good writing is vigorous and concise. I think it's the elements of style, or the essentials of writing. It's one of those. But for example, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect human and establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. But I want to stop right here. There is also a rule in their book. I don't know, they have different editions of it. But they say that don't put commas between a series of prepositions. But I would say that the rule on making a list, and then putting and before the last element in the list. You could use the prepositions in a list, and you could put a commas between them if you want to use it that way. Because if you're looking at how something has a distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to the elements of that list or array with programming. Programming can't help but work in relationship to how identity is. Space/existence, where both existence, space, and the slash are three bonded identities of volume. With it inside itself, inside the identity of volume that generates this, increasing, that is greater than it, and that is more finite than it. While it is greater than it. The Trinity is about this. So there are people from Trinity that are involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with other agencies and with judges, and with people associated with various natures of courts and their family members, that leading up to the World Trade Center attack, and since have roles with locations crimes, with investigators, investigations, and vetting identities that are worse than war crimes, for how they are kept victim predators. For example, in relationship to what is true always, not deny exceptions, as that integrity of truth. But that is evil. That is in the past and now relevant to where and how overtly and simultaneously, insidiously, all locations, especially the most forsaken, are prevented. The answer/S, in relationship to questions they have contained and having been contained inside bonded, juxtaposed natures of organized crime and of worse than war crimes, bonded by what everyone missed, and self-values being and having been missed, because where and how all natures of sophistication of logic, fact treatment nature, syntax treatment nature, sequence treatment nature, identity treatments, how they are maintained, propagated, uses of criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments that are specifically designed to maintain effectively easy remote uses of hundreds of nations, locations, areas, and states. Syntax nature, fact-checking nature, sciences further, while simultaneously further all database relationships, all intercampus relationships. So there are people involved with Wethersfield Police, forging names, switching names. And with Wethersfield Interbranch, other police firms are involved, from former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, who was the co-defendant in a 2006 district court case in Connecticut. No. His co-defendants, one of them had a daughter in my grade, a LaConch, and one of them that a DeMora family, and that a Hansen family, that I only know in context they're recorded, like with a Mr. Neville, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with judges and prosecutors, and with their families with predicate acts, and with identity thefts and frauds, sequence shifts, and other natures of evil that are also worse than just interstates and worse than just internations. These are people with a whole bunch of other nations that are involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Nothing personal against them either. Now there's a professor named Mendez, and no, now people associated with him are also involved with two Mendez police. Now this is how sense and sensibilities of people are being used, because these are people involved with the agencies and their family members involved with predicate acts that they didn't have the right to do in cases, and with depositions, and with investigations, and vetting identities leading up to that, and with all locations. See, they're recorded outside of courts, covering up their lie progressions, because how they've been fabricating audio and video and rolls with that in courts. I caught them with people on the child sex offender registry. These are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with locations, crimes, and furtherance of lie progressions tied to their roles, with more tied to a proven post-dated documents presented to a Ninth Circuit, which is right next to the World Trade Center towers, right before they got hit. Post-dated from inside the court. Someone had post-dated what had been brought in on time stamped in the court, delivered to the court. So then before the panel of judges, they showed them papers brought in late. That proven led to and that was in Manhattan, right before the World Trade Center attack. Before that, people had already been making confessions, requests for help to me and others about what was on-off intercity locations, like in West Hartford, that had Hartford courts. And I found I had the people associated with former director of the FBI and his co-defendants in that 2006 case, and leading up to it had news agencies and their investigators and the reporters and the people that work for the wires answering the phones and stuff. Nothing personal. So they pretend things are personal when they use people's identities. They pretend people make allegations because they're preventing the short words. They're preventing the three dimensions of the short words, so to speak, too, because of the nature of the methods that the criminally foreign influence use remotely Washington, D.C., World Trade Center already, through the roles with investigations programs with each agent nature, including programs that are syntax, fact-checking nature oriented with state's attorneys, with the courts. So in other words, so writing is often prevented concise, short words. And originally and still is in relationship to how they have the identities of the branches only capable of valuing each age of correlation natures, each location of each person, of each position of the human identity of volume prevented free speech, unless to collusion with that positive and negative. In collusion, as criminal insidious nature, as an identity of negative value nature progression. Not just lie progressions from every database relationship. Not just remote uses of that. Not just remote uses of that already having been. per their roles, with that having been extended into these other natures of organized crime, into their uses of pretending that's just legitimate. The way that, in other words, that they have hundreds of nations that tell us, and simultaneously while pretending other. They have undercover. They have all these overt criminal enterprise bad things. They have to stay close with or whatever. You know, they're sick. Not every modern nation is in a semi-ancient trap. When they debate things like this, when you hear the debates about things, they're leaving out answer / the evidences that are there. They have types of data, types of evidences that are only allowed discerned if they're going to leave out how correlation is evidence. They're going to help obfuscate that. They're going to help keep that prevented. Free speech, they're going to keep needing to pretend other. More and more, they're going to need to pretend that they believe that real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. Means they should, not be caught drinking or something like that. As criminal and ceaseless nature of positive treatment. Simultaneously have overt / insidious treatments of negative, overt / insidious. That's what that one thing that slavery was, one thing that the abuses of people from locations most hurt by that is not. There's a whole bunch of things it is. It is in complicated and simple. But way more extensive ways. It is true all ways, and not denying exceptions. And racism and prejudice is not one of those things. See, there are exceptions to exception nature, and so racism and in other words, collusion with logic that prevents the use of the finite denied, which is invisible but discernible evidence. We have uses of correlation nature's free speech prevented words. We have the identities of education, criminally foreign influence and delusions wrought, victims but victim predators, and that's self-valued because of the way the branch of the government are maintaining you need to hide lipoaggressions to those spots. There are people I never had anything to do with when I was in a grammar school. That grammar school was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with courts and with police forms with abuses of the kids, even sexual, even medical. And this is recorded. WFSB has also recorded both confirming this, recording this, and pretending other. Their roles attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations, fake words, fake recorded ties to themselves and others. Because of their roles, they needed to hide illusions. They needed to pretend to perceive things because of their predicate acts before that, with a whole bunch of related cases and their roles with investigations and investigators and vetting identities on and off their location through time. As victims. But see, they don't follow mandated law. It's where they're state victim predators. Everyone's forced to speak through other people. Now they have wire crime methods and acts, and mail crime methods and acts that the courts are involved with, and they say, oh, well, sue us. They have lawyers recorded involved with fabricating audio and video with them, so they can bring things before their courts with themselves, their family members, all tied to them, fact treatment, sequence shifts, fabricated audio and stuff like that, video. They already did this standard. They already standard sick nature like the overt criminal enterprises, fake sides and self-valuing that. To pretend they don't realize uses of the same criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, identity treatments. They kept needing to hide the same finite, active, progressive lies against people that don't even know them. They're influenced by investigations, investigators, and vetting identities to pretend other offensively. So there were teachers and stuff like that. They used the sense and sensibilities of them. There's a guy named Mr. Pruzzi. I had one conversation with him in my life. He told me to do a maze of a Joe DeMora. And I never saw Joe DeMora any other time on campus or off it. Before that happened, already when I was 2 years before that, in third grade, an O'Brien family had already confessed, recorded. I never had a class with them in grammar school. They went to my grammar school though, those brothers. Their parents were involved with various natures of predicate acts. I didn't know how to explain it like that. And sequence shifts. And uses of that. Exploitations of that. You know, this is, and also, a Debbie Gold is recorded, and others I don't know the names of, where they were fabricated. They had roles with interbranch family members fabricating audio and video into databases. Now I found out they have a Dillon family that is also involved in with my town's police chief and his family involved with wire crimes. There's an officer, Jerry Miller. There are people. There's a Kerr family recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with people also with the name KNERR, with predicate acts and with identity thefts and frauds, with courts, judges, and prosecutors because they've been needing to hide lie progressions, and with former director of the FBI and his co-defendants and federal criminals that were, before they were caught, they were involved with predicate acts against me that are recorded and against all the students. And everyone, no, I have to use people's names I had nothing to do with, ever, because they've been attaching little kids and their family members to fake locations through time. So the police have forced respect for the name of the police, originally, and still uses of that where they're exploiting exceptions and exception nature, and to hide how they've been criminally foreign influenced evidence, organized crime worse than war crimes, methods and natures and roles and uses of them in that. So there's a grammar school in my town with the people from Trinity College with other predicate acts, natures of predicate acts rules, nothing personal. Even where and how it is. I'm trying to show you. They're trying to sequence shift to bring us before courts that were recorded involved with them, with the other nations too. These are people. These are Trinity colleges, and our Central Connecticut State University's ties to Washington D.C. and to World Trade Center, in ways that are manifest intercampuses of each age and nature, intercities and intra-cities, and intercampuses and intra-campuses, ways missed, but invisible but still discernible. See, but we have, with experts, types of experts, all those, what they call training, that's why they're always complaining about training. It is from off all identity, the ground locations, maintained, or already having been maintained, what keeps, again, premises treatment, fact treatment, syntax treatment nature, as standing criminal and serious natures of positive and of negative and collusion. Fake manners. And regarding their sick, their roles with the sick natures of organized crime overtly / insidiously upon the north end of Hartford through my lifetime and since before that. And, for example, in relation and in Wethersfield, all exceptions and exception nature are in demonstration of it, and how it is tied to the contrast between urban and suburban, and how that was forced since before our founding parents were born, specifically for what is functional, which is one predicate acts delivery system method that uses all the juxtaposed natures of legalized, criminally legalized, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and opinion/conviction natures of people in titles A through Z. And that's juxtaposed hundreds of nations at once. Agreements with business, therefore value treatments, sequence treatments, A-B logic, extended logic that left and leaves out exceptions in exception nature. Leaves out sequence true. Leaves out and makes up all this stuff. So they're preventing free speech. They have readings. So I'm going to just change it a little because it frustrates me. I mean, not frustrates. I want to, before it's complicated, only because we have offensively the opinions and the convictions of the experts of each of the sciences that are preventing they're exploiting exceptions, and then everyone's, the perfect world's forsaken all. So that's the logic. That naive logic that stays. In other words, real science reveals instant reliefs. It relieves a nature of care and a method of care that just reveals evolution's fruits and gifts. It reveals that conjunction we are, which is capable of being afforded but not through these value nature systems that aren't using what makes us the identity that has it. So all that is big and all that is finite is in demonstration of and as the value of itself, which is inseparable from all identities of volume. Share one identity of volume juxtaposed with and as our value, as that value. Yeah, we are water, air, identity. We are sequence/simultaneous nature. So Trinity College has roles with people that pretended they had conversations with me in grammar school that I had nothing to do with. They're also, I caught them with abuses of kids, sexual, medical, medicine, and overt drugs, and untimely death locations, uses, and investigators, and vetting identities, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, forsaken, all kinds of exploited, involved with the predicate acts on my street. For example, with a real estate company, and a Dillon companies, and a Dillon family, against the previous, with crimes against everyone. See, but they pretend people have allegations, and they're preventing counters to these police calling up and switching names and forging names, and with roles with the name Sullivan. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, involved with police forms on and off Central Connecticut State University, involved with human trafficking, for example, attaching people to, which I don't want to use that phrase, but I'll show you. There are doctors and that are associated with police forms and with regular police and nurses that have been fabricating things into their databases, pretending people into their locations to hide their roles with and their predicate acts and wrongdoing and sequence shifts and fabricating audio and video with locations. Their roles with locations, worst natures of crime, and body dumping spots. There are also ties between the people involved with such natures of organized crime that are on the child sex offender registry, including the principal child offender who they forced with others by fabricating audio and video with him. When I caught them with other stuff and confessions, I didn't even get to speak about, because they don't let you speak about what is actually recorded. These same people were doing this at all the campuses I went to. But there are various natures of courts and judges and their family members and prosecutors and their family members involved with sequence shifts and all these things, identity thefts and frauds, which, for example, Black Lives Matter is victims' reactions and defenses of reactions of this fact-cheating nature that are being used by news media, all media, and to keep people prevented defenses of the law by the law. And they're with the syntax fact-cheating nature organized crime method, where then they pretend people make allegations. And in other words, they have all words / values that the courts and that the police forms already used criminally. So we have to have mandated law follow outside of courts by themselves. But see, we don't have that. And they are and were pretending other because we have sick things that they are told they could legally do. But they exploited and exploit exceptions of exception nature. So they painted themselves into corners, so now they can't. They forge names, switch names, and value their roles with locations. Really, what keeps the overt criminal enterprises? All private, all training and undercover with them. In collusion with, so Central Connecticut State University has various natures of sciences. They have people involved with all along the route from Wethersfield through Newington, on off Central Connecticut State University, Paul Manafort Drive, that are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with all kinds of natures of medical, organized crime, foreign and domestic, systems organized crime, databases, type stewards, and private, other. Even the playtime placements of ads in the ad companies with family members involved with the pattern. Then, in other words, they're sequence shifting too. When they had online, they're pretending passions, emotions, because whatever they said I take, those are people involved with sequence shifts. So there are a number of people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, Hartford courts, New Britain courts, Middletown courts, are involved with Joe Aiello and his family, with a former Mayor Gold, who's also involved with other mayors and their family members, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by people associated with them, involved further with the children criminally, all kinds of juxtaposed natures of child abuses, and of uses of how they have types of experts on types of things, like types of crimes, types of criminals, that are those types of crimes and criminals, specifically so they can pretend to be against what they are for, by a breaching method, originally and still, a predicate acts delivery system method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not police form or criminal. It is evidence how the lawyers were in collusion with the physical delusions and with the substance of the legal convictions and opinion natures originally still that are evidence themselves of the still entrenched breaching method tied to the Constitution still abridged that our founding parents wanted and needed us to demonstrate. And so them having those speaking where really they have. So we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, we're supposed to admit it wasn't perfect because there was an entrenched breaching method. That was a whole bunch of methods of roles with it, and of screening it, pretending other, self-valuing it, pretending other, as syntax. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice. Remember Marbury versus Madison. My father taught me. True justice must satisfy all appearances of true justice. Now, so there are also people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with investigations, investigators, and vetting identity, associated with uses of identity ground locations, where they spy on people's conversations with other people, and then they attach identity theft acts and methods that I need to counter through those same people. Like, for example, I had nothing to do with the people at Goodwin Park and or nor across the street from it with that cemetery, which is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with a whole bunch of people from Trinity College and from Central Connecticut State University that are involved with narratives where they fabricate audio and video. They also have methods, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneously on Central Connecticut State University and on Trinity College Manifest, from where and how the courts and police forms are kept needing to hide lie progressions. And other nations are keeping that here and there, that's kept, so they can keep them fake sides, pretending other, screening other. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, I'm adding the two, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, to promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and for our prosperity. We do ordain and do establish this Constitution of the United States of America. We're supposed to understand about the retreats, the forwards forced in collusion, with and as identities forced. Here they're sick. See, but that identity of sophistication was prevented while itself and sophistication, all words and values, were employed to needed ulterior identities of themselves, natures of and uses of themselves, as systems all ulterior from sophistication's identity, that which causes evolution's fruits and gifts. Santa Claus. This reveals evolution's fruits and gifts means from nowhere. So I just want to read Article 1. Is one sentence, but it is not concise. Some contexts are not concise. I mean, able to conformable to concise language because of the nature of where and how the three dimensions of our short words are prevented with all locations per the natures of collusion, that all the opinion natures of people A through Z, of titles A through Z, of systems A through Z, of database relationships A through Z, of overt criminal enterprises A through Z, of other nations shared here, hundreds of A nations, A1 through Z, however many, shared here, there, as what can't defend itself, and afford quality, positive, the science of positive, which about what is true always do not deny finite truths. See, when people put down laws and speak about, make opinions / convictions regarding the laws as they were written in the past, not by accident they leave out the breaching, the predicate acts delivery system method, clear as day. So, Section 1, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. See, they're an ill syntax nature. They're an ill fact-keeping nature. That having only been allowed to be is self-valued by them only having been allowed to pretend that they believe and to really believe that you think the real justice must satisfy real justice means be a theater. Criminal insidious nature of positive, of identity that sees itself through contrast, wearing on what's native pure that made America great by just doing damage control. America fell last. That's what makes America great. And we inherited that which was revealed before science became criminally foreign influenced, before human relations became criminally foreign influenced, tactically criminally foreign influenced, per a predicate acts delivery system method that is completely syntax oriented. It's completely fact sheet nature oriented. It's completely syntax sequence shifting, collusion, identity theft, frauds, natures of them, tall locations, missed, everyone speaking through others, and all exceptions in exception nature and demonstration of it. That's why the sequence shifts through time are important. Because people, when I was in middle school, there's a middle school that has a Dr. Graham, that has a Leahy family, and it has a Dr. Zeman, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with a whole bunch of family members of judges, and with the various nature court people that work for them, like a Judge Killian. I don't know if he's retired or not, but he's recorded involved with predicate acts and with rape threats, with a child sex offenders campus, with more then and now, involved also with doctors, involved with juxtaposed natures of child abuse, sexual, medical, judicial, wire crime act roles with Wethersfield Police, sequence shift roles with Wethersfield Police, forging names, switching names, preventing writing, mail crimes. Now, so get them onto paper, because I need the other judges' names associated with this Leahy family, also with a whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members, and like a Thaddeus Grabowski, involved on and off Fox Connecticut News with these two Mendez police, involved with people associated with the various departments at Central Connecticut State University, with intelligence community, also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with elections crimes and uses of elections locations, pretending just because they have a badge that means that they're telling the truth, which because too, for example, per readings of statutes that are criminal, have been criminally read per evidences of what they're doing with locations to force exceptions of nature to what those readings were taken as from being demonstrated. They have been using like people that run the prisons are have been trained also through Central Connecticut State University through time. They have state police and their family members having been influenced and being influenced to roles with juxtaposed nature, organized crime. I know they're people I barely know, so they have that involved with EMS, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with murder threats. A woman pretending, reportedly, that was broke into another woman's house on my street, forced themselves in, and threatened to kill her. There's also an officer who forced himself into my door and made I'll say it's a confession, made a threat to me about the Scalora family, and said that he's sequence shifting with them. And then he left. And that was instigated by them. See, they didn't need to pretend they came to my house for reasons other than they did. They have people, so they're preventing mandated law. And they have lawyers fabricating audio and video with them. There's a Trantolo and Trantolo recorded also involved with how they have the ad placements. Now, so a Trantolo and there are other FBI with them. There are other military with them. There are other intercampuses, on-off campuses programs associated with on-off WFSB and on-off Rocky Hill schools that are involved with programs on-off parks, that they have roles with the sequence shifts and identity thefts. And then so now I needed to call the school for years, but the school, they forced sustained child abuse since before the principal child offender was caught. And now this whole year, then since before the coronavirus came, there's an officer, Jerry Miller. There are people associated with New Britain Superior Court's Facebook page. Jerry Kerr. There are a number of people with the name Jerry Kerr, and there's a Mike Kerr, that are also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated by the police, involved with predicate acts, with groups that also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated the name Sullivan involved, and the departments at CCSU and Trinity College, and their roles with all along Route 3, all along the route, also in my town that goes from here to Central Connecticut State University, and on the street, Farmington Avenue, where they have the Harriet Beecher Stowe house note associated with the phrase Uncle Tom, and the Mark Twain house there, where they had their conjunction historically forged together, not just with the legitimate narratives. I'm saying where everyone was victims, employed as victim predators, not just employed. I shouldn't use the word employed. Affected as fact treatment, syntax treatment nature, breaching screens, tools, weapons as victims. So we have a syntax treatment problem. We have mandated law prevented offensively. We have styles pretending other offensively. They're forging names and switching names. So, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a share of the Senate and of a House of Representatives. All legislative powers, legislative. See, 3 branches of government are manifest, increasing volume, positive or negative, in every modern nation. Same way, and why, and how. Cell nucleus, cell body, and cell walls are manifest. I am not a doctor. There is a identity the sciences share. And we need to have free speech. We need to have sequence shifts. We need to have the identity of the ground locations of the legislative branch, of the executive branch, and of the judicial branch demonstrated being and having been employed, self-value, criminally foreign influenced, delusions wrought, and exploited that way, as victims, and how as victims, wanting and needing us to call them victim predators, because this is a syntax-oriented, fact-treatment nature-oriented, predicate acts, delivery system, and cover-up method, that which extended and extends and keeps them to collusion with the worst physical crimes and other natures of identity thefts and frauds relevant to this method /S of identity thefts and frauds that the courts involved with the predicate acts on off Trinity College, on off Central Connecticut State University have. Note, with other police forms and with the interbranch from my town, this is evidence that shows distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously how individually grouped and together the branches of government are kept lie progression, cover-up natures, needs, and methods of breaching screens, tools, weapons, worse, crime methods individually grouped and together. For example, they distinctly switch names, the executive branch and the judicial branch. They distinctly switch sequences, lie about sequences. They distinctly fabricate audio and video. Their methods of it and of getting away with it are distinct. and they are also simultaneous. And observance of that also reveals actually recorded, like this former Mayor Gold and his family members and people associated with them. There's also a pattern of a Joshua Julian and these others, like this Mendez police, on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, on and off New Britain Superior Court, fabricating audio and video with child sex offenders, attaching kids and their family members to fake words with their families and to fake locations through time. Now, see, the lawyers, too, this is why we have to counter how the lawyers take collusion with such, by breaking things up that are inseparable, where and how they're juxtaposing natures of organized crime and self-valuing that having been done, because then they can keep pretending to be about speech legitimately. To keep pretending to be about sequence treatments, identity treatments legitimately. So we have to have mandated law followed. So this is Wethersfield, but it's intercities connected. Because they have confessions also that made complicated, where everyone was speaking through other. Trinity College recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, confirmed a Joshua Stryker. I never had a conversation with Verbal. And a girl associated with a Heather Hansen on Trinity College. I don't know her name. And people associated with the DeMoro family and with an Aiello family and with a Zano family. I barely know the Zano family. Only contacts I know them in. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with investigations, investigators, and vetting identities, prosecutors, and judges involved with connected illusions, predicate acts on and off their locations roles through time. Years ago, there was another, they own dry cleaners. Years ago, there was another dry cleaner company. I don't know, I think it's still around, the company, I don't know. But the guy was supposed to be a really nice guy. Reportedly, he's a really nice guy and stuff like that. He had a good life, everything. One day, he got in his car on Griswold Street. And someone hit him and took his whole door out. And he lost his life. So there were a whole bunch of crazy things that take place on Griswold Street through time. I don't know about that, if that has conjunction to it, because of the conjunction between those things I figured out. How we could discern it all and see it recorded together ourselves too. It has relationship to how they have all these other nations here. Like Russians, Pakistan. There were, with psychology. Now these are doctors recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved further with predicate acts on the campuses in my town and intra-campuses, not just inter-campuses, because that's also recorded relevant, and their uses of black and white. When I'm using how they use black and white judges, black and white female judges too, for predicate acts with Confederate flag themed, KKK themed, and database themed, and identity thefts and frauds roles, and natures of that, sequence shift roles, overt and simultaneously insidiously criminal insidious nature standing as the only people that have been speaking for us since I was a kid. So we have the uses of Facebook, interbranch, intercities, and intercampuses, involved with what is manifest intra-campuses, what is manifest with where and how they have exceptions and exception nature exploited, where they tell people to speak, oh, that's business, so you can speak about it, that's market. In other words, but intersciences, exception nature, they're preventing free speech. They're mixing even theater, so for the defenses of it, where they're involved with identity thefts and frauds, slanders, worse than war crimes, sustained. This is keeping and had kept all kinds of evidence organized crime acts and natures leading up to the World Trade Center that the World Trade Center had inclusion with. that Washington, D.C. had collusion with through physical delusions,